Welcome to Betrayal of a Nation. The Constitution is null and void. A six-part series of panel discussions centered around the topics highlighted in the documentary Betrayal of a Nation, which I co-produced. My name is Brandy Webb, and I'm also the director of Betrayal of a Nation. Betrayal of a Nation is a documentary that puts the United States government on trial for crimes committed against Black and Brown citizens. I am excited to announce that Betrayal of a Nation is now available to pre-order on betrayalofanation.com, where the film will be released to rent beginning February 26th.
Hello, everyone. I'm Trina Asidu. I am the co-producer of Betrayal of a Nation. As promised, we are here live on Facebook, and we are holding a talk back on Clubhouse following this discussion. Tonight's show is part 5 of our discussion, Police Brutality. We are trying to galvanize support behind the documentary, and we need your help. I'm asking our viewers to please take a minute to share this live video and personally invite 5 people who you feel would be enlightened and inspired by this discussion.
So in the meantime, allow tonight's discussion to get your wheels turning and your fire burning. So before we kick off with panelist introductions, we are going to play the official trailer for the Betrayal of a Nation documentary. Please stand by.
They did not see Black people as human. The whole goal to have these people here was to build this country.
Today, you will see that the U.S. has never intentionally harmed anyone, and the history of events have been misconstrued.
Today, I will prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the defendant has indeed committed the crime of terror, as well as many more atrocities which have deeply affected its citizens.
Jim Crow laws were stated as separate but equal, but we know that they were separate and not equal.
The state has invested more than $1 million in incarcerating people.
It was not about suspicious people, but about Black people, Latino people.
We've always been presumed guilty and dangerous.
How can we say that all lives matter when Eric Garner can be choked on camera and the officer who did it could get a pay raise?
He said, I can't breathe 11 times.
Policing is a responsibility of state.
The way they move when they see a threat like a Malcolm.
With that infrastructure already set up, all they had to do was change the direction to target these Black organizations.
Conspiracy, stalking, harassment, aiding and abetting.
And then they move to the next stage, which is the physical assassination. They were determined to lynch Dick Rowland that night. After the massacre, we were charged, and not one white person charged.
Arson, fraud, false imprisonment, assault with a deadly weapon.
Yes, this nation has its flaws, just like any place else, but no other place values freedom the way America does.
They make shit up.
America has to right its wrongs.
People are still being denied rights, still being held in cells without cause, still being treated differently because of income, gender, or race.
Reparations will absolutely be forced.
This is all still happening.
The prosecution attempts to divide this great nation. Where else on the planet can the people take their own country?
Yes, what a powerful, powerful trailer. I don't know about you guys, but I am excited about seeing this movie. But let's get into it. We are excited to introduce to you tonight's panelists. We have a panelist of 5 amazing individuals that are tied to the movement for Black liberation. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Jill Colleen Jefferson. Jill is a civil rights and international human rights attorney who grew up in the racist and de facto segregation of rural Mississippi, Prior to her legal career, in brief, she researched civil rights cold cases and was one of 4 speechwriters on President Barack Obama's 2012 campaign and served in various roles on Capitol Hill, the White House, national and state political campaigns, think tanks, and advocacy nonprofits. She earned her bachelor's degree in English and history with a minor in French at the University of Virginia and her JD from Harvard Law School. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for being here, Jill. And next up, we have Tori DeMar. Tori is a mother of 2 and works in the health insurance field. She is also actively pursuing her master's in social work and graduated from NCCU University. Welcome, Tori.
Hello. Thank you guys for having me.
We're also proud to bring to you Jeffrey Haas. Jeffrey was one of the founders of People's Law Office, PLO, in Chicago in 1969, where he worked on the movement, criminal defense, and police civil rights cases from 1969 to 2002. Along with his law partners, he represented the families of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark in a 13-year civil rights case that exposed the FBI-led COINTELPRO conspiracy that resulted in the Chicago police raid on December 4th, 1969, that killed Hampton and Clark. He is the author of the book entitled The Assassination of Fred Hampton: How the FBI and Chicago Police Murdered a Black Panther. From 2016 to 2018, Jeff was one of the main criminal defense attorneys who defended water protectors at the Standing Rock, North Dakota, and he has been on the board of the Waters Protector Legal Collective since its creation in 2017. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you. I'm very proud to be here, and what a wonderful panel we have. Thank you.
Absolutely. It is our pleasure. All right. So we are proud to bring to you as well. I'm really excited to have here today Jafari Jones on our panel. Jafari is an activist and a community organizer. He is the president of BLM 757 and was nominated for Activist of the Year via iHeartMedia, 103 Jams, 92.1 The Beat. He won the Uplift Award via the City of Norfolk, awarded for uplifting the community during COVID-19. Jafari is also published and recognized in numerous local, national, and international news sources, including but not limited to the Associated Press, the Washington Post, Newsweek, and the Daily Beast. Welcome, Jafari. We are glad to have you here with us today.
And last but never least, it is a pleasure to introduce Reverend Kirsten John Foyle. I hope I said your last name correctly. Reverend Kirsten's personal and professional commitment to social change and progress is rooted in his personal narrative of racial and class diversity. Until October of 2018, Kirsten served as the Northeast Regional Director of the National Action Network, a national civil rights organization headquartered in New York City and founded by the Reverend Al Sharpton. In October of 2018, after a quarter century of activism, Kirsten founded the Arc of Justice Incorporated, a civil and human rights organization inspired by the philosophies of nonviolent direct action of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The Arc of Justice had, by its first anniversary, grown to a national organization with chapters and affiliates in 21 cities. Kirsten, along with Gwen Carr's mother of Eric Gardner, who is also in the Betrayal of a Nation documentary, led the Fire Pantaleo movement, in which resulted in the dismissal of the officers responsible for the killing of Eric from the NYPD. Kirsten also launched the Education Equity Campaign, which is focused on the top-bottom systemic reforms to public education. Welcome, Kirsten.
Welcome. Thank you. Good to be here with you guys. Appreciate the opportunity. And the last name is Foy. Drop the L.
Thank you.
All right. So I got the feeling this is going to be a good show. So We're gonna just jump right in. All right. So the phrase police brutality is synonymous with the abuse of Black and brown people in America. Surely there are white victims of brutality, but it is not happening at the rate that it is happening in our communities. Why do you think this is? First, I would like to throw this out to Jafari and then have Kirsten respond. Unmute your mic, Jafari.
Not used to Zooms, but I feel like very great question for one. But I feel like the reason why we're most disproportionately targeted when it comes to this, because the initial reason for the police department in the first place was to hunt down slaves. So then the system in itself was originally created to hunt down our ancestors and ourselves, and take us into places that we not meant to be, behind bars, slavery, and captured. So this country was literally built on racism, with Christopher Columbus coming over here and stealing this land. I'm in Virginia, where the first Africans were brought to America in 1619 at Fort Monroe. So this is literally the birthplace of, injustices. And we're also, the home to the Confederacy, where in Yorktown, where the Confederates first fired on American troops to keep slaves. So it's all in the blueprint of America. If I could say anything, it's the blueprint of America is what America is. And it's why we have to continue to disrupt until we are given the rights of everybody else in this country, because we were brought here. We didn't ask to be here. So we deserve to have the same rights as everybody here, and deserve to be able to walk out of our streets and not worry about being killed by the police.
Thank you. Kirsten, would you like to add to that to respond to the question?
I would agree that everything that the young brother just espoused. I would just simply add 2 points. One, we have to recognize, notwithstanding the history, that that past is prologue. And so the current function of law enforcement in this country is to protect property and to continue to feed the carceral system, which is an economic supplement to the labor force. And so while we still have private profiteering off of the enslavement or the shackling of human beings, we also recognize that there is an economic incentive to continue to keep communities of color, economically and socially disenfranchised communities, not just in prison, but indebted as well. And so the carceral system, the purpose of the carceral system is to both imprison us physically and imprison us economically. And the police are the main instruments of this imprisonment. And I would just add that there is, for the last several decades, been an active infiltration of law enforcement by white supremacists and white nationalist groups. They have intentionally and strategically targeted law enforcement agencies for employment, for participation, and a career track in law enforcement, so that they can then use law enforcement agencies. They can, in essence, weaponize the badge or the shield to advance their racist, hateful agendas. And so if you consider the history of law enforcement, the current function of law enforcement, and you couple that with qualified immunity, you see that there is a ripe field or harvest for racists in our communities, using a badge and a shield as a pretext for their hatred.
Thank you for pointing that out. So true. My question is for Jafari. You had recently shared a story with me with regards to police behavior, where they were acting violently towards your group who was peacefully protesting. Why do you think the police are against protesting, even if it's peaceful protesting?
Because they can't control us, and we held several protests last year, and there's one particular city who has been targeting us, which is Virginia Beach. I said we are BLM 757. We cover pretty much a realm of cities. Pretty much we say 7 cities, but it's between 7 and 12 cities. Virginia Beach being one of the most aggressive towards us as activists, where they're a very red city, and they want to keep quote unquote law and order. So we're targeted by them because I said they're comfortable being able to arrest us as they want. They're comfortable being able to trump up charges on people who can't afford lawyers and send them away for long periods of time. They are comfortable in that privilege and that power where they can control a Black man or woman in that instance, and they feel emboldened, I believe. There are some cities who were more or less reluctant to offer us resistance. We have a case in point. We've held several, if not dozens, of protests in the city of Norfolk, the city directly adjacent to Virginia Beach. Never one arrest, never one injury, never one anything. And then you take it to Virginia Beach, and we're constantly harassed. They put up barricades to make sure people can't get to our protests. We're intimidated. We're pulled over and forced to take different field sobriety checks, even though we're 100% sober. There's been intimidation factors. So there's a fear, I believe, that some of the Caucasians, or however it may fold, are going to lose their power and going to lose their comfortability level of being able to literally take out their racist aggressions on Black people. So we feel like they're losing their power. They're feeling like the walls are closing in on them, and they try to police protests against police. How do you police a protest against you? That's like somebody coming up to me saying, "Hey, I don't like what you're doing, but I'm going to let you tell me exactly how. I'm going to tell you how I don't like what you're doing." How does that make sense? In what world? And then the First Amendment protects you from a lot. Peacefully protesting is not illegal. So we are facing good trouble. I was set to go to court tomorrow for the case, but it got continued because they tried to send my lawyer body cam footage today, a day before trial. I was set to be in court at 8:30 in the morning tomorrow, but they just sent my lawyer 6 hours of additional video to have it. Again, that goes to systematic racism. It goes to a system designed to fail us, because I do have a paid attorney, but if I had a court-appointed attorney, I'm pretty sure they would have went in there tomorrow, despite just getting this on their desk, and tried to fight it out, as opposed to what my lawyer did, which was continue it until May, where they can review this 6 hours of footage, make sure that everything is still where it's at. But at the end of the day, this is for a peaceful protest. Impeding traffic, small minuscule things, but in other cities, we've been able to do this and everybody go home and everything was fine. And we've been able to get laws changed. We've been able to get people exonerated. We've been able to get Juneteenth recognized as a statewide holiday. As the Queen represented before, we have received awards from other cities. So the cities who want to stay in the law and order, want to go off of I don't even want to mention them no more, but want to go off the orange face rhetoric and continue to take America down that path, their time is up. And they're realizing that, and there's more of us than them. So I'm sorry I couldn't give a short answer, but they are scared. They're very scared that we are going to, who knows? They're scared they're going to have their significant others are going to have interest in melanin. There's going to be a bunch of melanin mixed babies running around here. And then what? Now they're eliminated. Now the country that they stole and raped and enslaved and built off corruption is losing its structure, is losing its fortitude, it's losing everything that it had to lay claim. If we take away all the babies by melanating everybody, what are they going to do? They're going to be in the country with melanated babies, mixed babies, mulatto babies, a little bit of everything babies. So now you're in a stolen country and everybody looks not like you. So now you have to go back to Europe, go back to Europe or wherever you claim and not exist here. So if you don't like what's going on in America, you should go back to wherever you came from. Huge. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you for all of that. You said a lot of really important things. And at the bottom of the day, or at the end of the day, it's about power. So thank you for that. So in the case of Fred Hampton, who was a peaceful activist, police officers shot up his home and they raided his home supposedly for illegal weapons. So the police were able to say that they were defending their lives when they shot up this man's home, which was the furthest from the truth. So, Mr. Jeffrey Haas, what real defense do Black American citizens have against the police when they can simply say, I was afraid or defending my life?
Well, it's a good question, and I can't say that the courts are by any means a great defense. They are sometimes keep people out of jail, and sometimes we expose what really happened, what the atrocities are. And in the case of Hampton, as you said, after the raid, the state's attorney and the police who had been assigned to him said, well, we were just serving a search warrant and the Panthers opened fire on us. And there, but by the grace of God, all our people would have been shot or killed. The reality was the police fired 90 shots. One shot came out from Mark Clark, who was probably fatally wounded, so it was a reflexive shot. And Fred Hampton, who was this tremendously charismatic young 21-year-old Black leader in Chicago, was actually executed in his bed. I went there the morning of December 4th, and his fiance told me there was a knock on the door. The police came in shooting. They pulled me out of the bedroom during a break in the firing. Two officers went in, and one of them said, is he dead yet? I heard two shots, and the other one said, he's good and dead now. So we couldn't, of course, bring Fred back to life. Not surprisingly to any of you, the survivors of the raid were all charged with attempted murder as though they had initiated it. And it took quite a while to at least prove that none of them had fired any weapons and were innocent. The extension of the case, though, went beyond what the Chicago police did to exposing that the COINTELPRO program, which I'm sure most of you, all of you know, was particularly targeted what they call Black nationalist hate groups, which when I asked them what is a Black nationalist hate group, they said, well, it's a Black organization that has a headquarters in Washington, D.C. or anywhere. So their definition now, they call people they're targeting Black identity extremists. So the lingo has changed, but the effort to justify their attacks has not changed. Anyway, in the course of 13 years litigation, which they fought all the way, and the power structure did, the police did, the mayor did, but even higher, the FBI did, we learned that the FBI had obtained a floor plan from their informant. That floor plan was given to the police who came in raiding, and actually, when we looked at the direction of the bullets, they did go towards Fred Hampton's bed. So this was a much larger conspiracy than the normal police shootout. Its intentions, though, was to wipe out a movement or a movement leader. And so it went beyond controlling the community, brutalizing, incarcerating the community, but particularly targeted this person because part of their program was prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify and electrify the Black masses. And Fred had the ability to do that. And he had the ability to obtain allies with Puerto Ricans, with Appalachian whites, with the progressive white community. So he was seen as a real threat to them. And so recent documents we just got literally a month ago, we knew that O'Neill, the informant, got a bonus, but it turns out that his control agent, Mitchell, got continuous bonuses and rewards from the FBI, who considered the raid on the Hampton apartment in which Fred and Mark were killed and 4 people were shot a success, carried out the function of the COINTELPRO program. So these documents show that the planning for the raid not only started with O'Neill and Mitchell and the local FBI, but Hoover and his agents, top people, were involved in watching it, monitoring it, and rewarding it after it happened. So the highest levels of government, and we would have gone to try to get to John Mitchell and Nixon, but because we didn't have the documents we just got, we couldn't prove to this judge that we had the connection that these orders came from the top and really was an execution ordered at least as high as Hoover, if not John Mitchell and Nixon, who certainly sanctioned it and covered it up if they didn't cause it.
Thank you so much. So the director is coming and she was having a little technical difficulty. I'm just gonna give her a second to rejoin us. You're muted.
I'm here.
Welcome back.
Yes.
Just in time you had a question for Mr. Jeffrey.
Yes. Jeffrey, so you were one of the attorneys representing the families of the civil suit for Hampton versus Hanrahan, which the families received a settlement, but none of the players in Chairman Fred's death were ever held accountable. Settlements are common in these types of police shooting cases, yet there are never any criminal charges or convictions for these crimes.
Oops. You got.
So the question is, why do you think that is, that settlements are common in these police shootings, yet there are never criminal charges or conviction for the crimes? Why do you think that is?
Well, one, the prosecutors work with the police every day. And so they don't want to put police in jail when they're putting police on the stand. And we used to call it in Chicago, test a line. So they have a deal. And so they don't prosecute police because in fact, they use them to prosecute mostly Black and brown people and incarcerate them. Also, the prosecutors are part of the whole system that allows police brutality. And as you mentioned, when we get a judgment in a civil case, it's usually paid by the city, not by the police. They don't face criminal charges. And as Iberia Hampton said to me, even after we showed that they murdered Fred and got some money for the families, she said, basically, they got away with murder. And she said, we had to pay for our own son's death. In other words, it was tax money that paid for the settlement that we got. So I think civil cases are very important. We never got an apology from the city of Chicago or a recognition formally of what the city had done. So I think more recently in the Burge case, they actually got reparations. And I think that should be a new horizon for cases against the police in the city, is actual reparations and acknowledgement of what is being done or what has been done.
You're muted.
Not me.
There we go. Yes. Thank you for responding to that, Jeff. My next question is for Tori.
Can I
Tori.
I'm sorry, there's a really quick point I want to add to that. I think civil suits are important because it gives the family and the community additional legal tools. Whereas the prosecution, the criminal cases are controlled by the state, which in most of these instances are the bad actors. A civil trial gives the victims and gives the community an opportunity to access files and access evidence, to take depositions, to get a public record, whether it be truthful or not, out of many of these bad actors. So it goes beyond just the ability to recompense in a material way. It also gives us the ability to expand the scope of of a movement and a community's ability to hold police and the prosecution accountable. We can get things through a civil trial that we would not be able to get through a criminal trial on public record.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that in, Kirsten. We have these civil trials, but I'm just waiting to see a real criminal trial take place in these police shootings. But yes, you are right to that. Civil suits are definitely necessary, and it is also a form of accountability. So thank
Can
you.
I speak on that briefly?
Go ahead.
I would like to highlight the fact that we do have a case of a success here in Virginia in the 757. One of the initial reasons why we started justice for William Chapman. He was an 18-year-old unarmed black man killed in front of Walmart in Portsmouth, and in Portsmouth, Virginia. And we actually it went to trial. There was one, a black Commonwealth attorney, two, a black judge, and we were able to get a conviction, an indictment, and conviction. He did 1.5 years in prison. It wasn't what we wanted, but it was an actual conviction. So I would like to take this opportunity to spread that awareness, if they could, and if anybody could research the story of William Chapman, Portsmouth, Virginia. The officer's name was Stephen Rankin. But the thing that really brings you back to this fact is Stephen Rankin killed prior to killing William. He killed another minority. They weren't black, but he killed another minority and shot that individual 11 times and was able to get rehired on another force where he was actually able to kill again. Like I said, he did it's a couple of years in prison or whatever, but it wasn't what we wanted, but we were able to see some type of justice. So if nothing else, we do want to start putting out that blueprint. It wasn't just us. It wasn't just what we had going on. It was people on the inside with a conscience who knew what happened was wrong. And so when you're electing these individuals, just know you're voting. It matters more than just a presidential election. When you are electing or voting for your Commonwealth attorney, that matters. The Commonwealth attorney is who ultimately convicted this officer of this crime. So when you're electing your sheriff, when you're electing your Commonwealth attorney, when you're electing your treasurer, when you're electing your city council, we get too caught up on these presidential elections and we forget who runs our local areas. So it's these local officials who are doing or not doing the work they're supposed to be doing. And I encourage everybody, whatever city you're in, do the research on your city's officials. Make sure in your hometown, where you sleep, where you rest every day, where you lay yourself to bed, that the individuals who are quote unquote in power in that area are doing right by the people. If not, get them the F up out of there, because they're only doing a more and more of a disenfranchise of our people. They're sitting in office, they're collecting salaries, and when they retire, they'll collect pensions and they'll have accolades and they'll have seals sent to their funerals and they'll be highly praised. And they may have destroyed thousands, if not millions, of Black lives in their wake, and they'll be praised and honored for that. So make sure that you are stepping up to your local elections. Again, her name is Stephanie Morales. I definitely encourage everybody to research Commonwealth Attorney Stephanie Morales. She was also able to ensure that the Portsmouth 19 who were arrested for bringing down a Confederate monument in Portsmouth, including Senator Lucas, a black senator who we consider an elder in a hierarchy here in Virginia, Senator Lucas. They even tried to indict her on felony charges. They tried to indict 19 people.
Thank you, Jafari. And what we'll do is we'll drop your social media tags so that way others can reach out to you to find out information. That is very invaluable information. So thank you for sharing that with us. And we know that, these cases of police convictions and accountability are very far and few in between, but it is great for us to know that there is a success case out there, and hopefully that sets the precedent for cases all across the nation. And so I'm going to move on to the next question. My question is for Tori. Tori, you were in a situation where an officer attacked you. You pressed charges, and that officer pinned you with assault charges that were false. In order to get your charges dropped, the police department made a deal and asked you to dismiss the charges that you had against them. Can you briefly share that story of what happened to you?
I definitely can. I want to share the story to bring more awareness to what's going on with not only African American men but women. So really what happened is about a couple of years ago, I went up to New Jersey. I went to a family reunion, was invited up there by my brother. That night, I went to his building in Atlantic City to spend the night, and it was kind of late. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I left something downstairs. Didn't have a phone on me. Didn't even have shoes on my feet, and went downstairs to my car. When I came back up, I couldn't remember which apartment that I came out of. All the apartments looked the same up there. And so the suit in the building, he saw me out in the hallway, and he did ask me, what was I doing there? I told him that I was lost, that I couldn't remember what apartment my brother stayed in, but that I was an invited guest. And he proceeded to tell me that he was gonna call the police because I couldn't just be standing out in the halls. And that's pretty much what he did. Now, when the police came, I thought that they were gonna be more so assisting me, but they proceeded to interrogate me about, who I was, where I came from, which I gave all willing information of visiting my brother from North Carolina. But it just seemed, at the time, I felt the energy that they weren't there to help me. So pretty much he told me that I needed to leave the building, which, okay, I did let him know that, I'm here, I'm visiting, and to solve this problem, you would kick a female who doesn't have a phone, doesn't even have shoes on her feet, out, in the streets, with no help. So as we were going down the stairs, because he knew I had my brother's key card, I had showed him that I had the key card to the building. I did that because I felt like if, I told him I had this key card, that he would know that I had got it from my brother. I was an invited guest. But he asked me for the key card back. When I told him no, he twisted my arm behind my back. He shoved me up against the wall. I started screaming, and there were some more officers, and it just felt like everyone was just like really piled on my back at that point. I was screaming for my life. I was scared for my life. I thought they were going to kill me. My face and everything was being pounded into a serrated wall. My brother, eventually he came out. He heard me screaming. My son at the time, he was 12 years old. He was also inside. So when he came out and he saw that, the officers were on me, he was the one that pretty much said, "Hey, that's my sister. Why are you on my sister?" They got up off of me at that point, and I didn't even know that he had to tell me that part of it, because everything was just like all in a whirlwind at that point. But what the officer did tell me, and what I did hear that rung out in my ears, was he said, "Oh, you said you were from North Carolina? Well, I'm gonna show you how it's done in New Jersey." So either way, he took, and I gave him the key card. He arrested me that night. I was all bruised up. I went to the hospital. I told the hospital staff that the officer that brought me in was the officer that had abused me, but he still stayed with me the whole entire time. Pretty much the next morning, that's when I went up to and turned to the police station, and I filed a complaint with internal affairs against that particular officer. And you told the story about, basically, as the story went forward, the way that they saw to resolve that issue was because they also said that I resisted arrest that night. So they said that if I drop my internal affair investigation on those officers, that they would drop the criminal case that they pretty much fraudulently put on my name.
Thank you for sharing your story, Tori. I'm truly sorry that that happened to you. No woman or even individual should have to go through that. Jill and Jeff, how common is it for officers to falsely charge people that they victimize with assault as a means to get the victim to drop potential charges that they may file against that officer? And we can start with Jill.
To be honest with you, there isn't really a solid way to answer that question, because an officer, they're not so often these cases, when they do that, they don't reach the media. People don't know unless people speak out. And so the amount of actual, things happening like that, it's hard to know. But things that we do know are that a lot of times with the procedures that happen in police departments, when these things do happen, of course they get swept under the rug, and we can assume that it happens much more often than we think it does. But to have an exact number is incredibly difficult, in part because the people who have these numbers are the people who are doing these things.
Yes, thank you. And I'm not looking for specific numbers. I'm looking for a roundabout idea of how, is this something that commonly happens with police departments? Are they usually putting false charges on people as a means to prevent people from filing charges on them?
Well, in Chicago, I don't think I ever had a case of police brutality where the police didn't claim that the person did something to provoke them. We used to almost have a joke. They used to sometimes say, well, all of a sudden this person started wheeling his arms around or her arms around, things people just don't do, but justify
furtive movement.
Furtive movement.
How often do you hear furtive movements? It's the justification for so much spilled black blood. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it
rings a bell. I mean, it was almost like all of a sudden people would start doing these irrational things when a policeman approaches, as opposed to the fact that he had a victim who had a bloody nose or a black eye or a broken arm, and he couldn't explain that. He had to write a report, and his report, obviously, or her report, had to say the offender did X, Y, and Z, and I had to use necessary force to subjugate them. So it's very common. And of course, if the person does, we frequently would wait to file a lawsuit until if we could beat the criminal case, because they would. It's not unusual that they would want to make that deal.
To quickly add to that, especially, and this relates to something that we were talking about just a few minutes ago, with these justifications and how these things happen. So right now, one of the biggest things in our way as civil rights attorneys is the fear justification, because it's abused, and also because it is incredibly, incredibly biased. And so right now, these things that are happening. So take, for example, everybody's been talking about the Capitol insurrection, and they've been talking about how protesters, those rioters, those insurrectionists were treated differently than were, Black Lives Matter protesters. And within that, one thing we need to look at is the fear justification and looking at these cops who were not at all afraid of an armed mob coming toward them and taking selfies with them and letting them into the building. Yet a whole mob, that doesn't scare you, but one Black person in a car, that scares you. And so it shows the abuse of these justifications. It also shows that people also, alternatively, and I would also say in addition, the fear justification is one where people, it's racism. People are cops so often are more afraid of Black people than they are of white people for irrational reasons. And that comes out, and we saw that in the Capitol insurrection. We saw that those differences, we can look at so many killings and so many instances of assault and harassment, and it stems from that, honestly, very ridiculous justification.
Thank you so much for what you just added, Jill. Before I go into my next question, I just want to say, Tori, I'm very sorry you went through that experience. Like, it was really hard for me to listen to that. And I'm just happy that you're alive and able to share your story. I am sorry you went through that.
Thank you. Thank you a lot. That definitely means a lot to me. During the situation, honestly, I can say when they say literally you see your life flashed before your eyes, like I literally didn't think that I was gonna be one of the ones that would have made it out. So I'm happy to be sitting here talking to you today, and I'm happy to share my story with you guys.
Or if you don't mind my asking, did anything ever come of that? Like, were charges ever filed against anybody? Was there anything that came of that legally?
No, I had to get a lawyer, so I got a paid lawyer, and pretty much they came to my lawyer with that deal that if I dropped the internal investigations case, so where they wouldn't get charged criminally, then they would drop the case on me that I resisted arrest.
Okay. And you took that deal?
My lawyer advised me to.
Got you. Okay. Thank you for answering that.
Sorry about it. Yeah. I really wanted more to come out of that. I really felt like it was a setup, honestly, and I really felt like, it was like I had no choice in the situation, and maybe I could have been advised better legally, but the way I felt in the situation was like I had to take that deal. If I didn't take that deal, pretty much it would have been my word against theirs, because there was no police body cams. No
was
footage.
it a paid lawyer? Was it a paid or court-appointed lawyer?
It was a paid lawyer.
Wow.
Yeah, Tori, you and I had spoke off the cameras about your case, and I could understand why you would feel pressured to. No one wants to go to jail or risk, a trial and going to jail for criminal charges. And I'm glad you made it out safe, and I truly hope that you do pursue that civil suit, because as Kirsten said, that is a form of accountability.
Definitely. I'm definitely going to pursue that. I just need to figure out those avenues to take, but for sure that is definitely one of the things that I was advised that could hold those officers accountable was civilly, at least if not those officers, the police department itself.
Right. Qualified immunity protects the individual officer from individual liability, but you can certainly sue the department for damages if there have been some permanent injuries to your persons or your finances or some material injury that you've suffered. But I think it speaks to a larger point. It touches two third rails in my mind. One, which is how police are incentivized to perform and produce, and the metrics for which they judge good policing. Most officers, when we talk about any kind of engagement with the public, most officers are looking to meet a certain quota or a certain expectation of their commanding officer. And it is easy for them to target us, and it's easy for them to criminalize us in order to meet those metrics, right? And so that's one piece. The other piece of it is, not only do they trump up charges to insulate themselves and use for leverage and bargaining to get themselves out of trouble, they trump up charges for their own performance and productivity reports and their own personnel records. And so police are promoted based on how many people they arrest, based on how many tickets they write. They are rewarded and awarded for in essence, criminalizing individuals. And so you're going to find that that not only do you see a lot of trumped up charges around abusive behavior, but you see trumped up charges around all kinds of behavior. There are literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in this country who are arrested for absolutely no legal justification. But cops need to perform, cops need to get promoted, cops need recognition, cops need collars, cops need tickets. And so we are, a ripe field for the harvest. And that is the unfortunate reality that faces not just people who are victimized by police, abusive police, but people who are victimized by policing, period.
Thank you for that. And I know we have a couple more questions to get through, so hopefully no one has to go right away. So we want to pivot for a moment and just talk about police officers. We are still talking about police officers' behavior, but talking about police officers when it has to do with someone who's mentally ill, and you call the 911 because you have a mentally ill family member, and the police shows up on the scene, and oftentimes your mentally ill family member may actually end up being murdered by the police. So I feel that it begs the question of, why is the police the only option that we have when we talk about de-escalating delicate situations like this? Jill, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Why are the police the only option we have? I think because people have not adopted other options. You know, a few months ago, there was an incredible piece in the New York Times, and it laid out all types of alternatives to police responding to instead of a cop responding to certain situations, having actual people who are trained in that thing respond, like social workers, or mental health professionals. And so much of this, I think, I'm gonna be real with you, I think part of it is the rhetoric that we use. I think that defunding, that divides people, and it's caused some people to not adopt, these alternatives that honestly are very much reasonable. And so I think that honestly, one reason why that is our option is because that, like, people are afraid of what the alternative is, what defund means. They think it means no cops. They think it means, oh, what am I going to do if somebody breaks into my house? So it goes to it goes to people, not having adopted this. And honestly, for a long time, I think some people being complacent and not coming up with the newer solutions. I think we have realized in recent months that those solutions are going to have to come from us, because the governments are not going to do them. They're not going to come up with them. And so that's the place that we're in.
Thank you, Joe. Jafari, did you have something to add?
Yes. Again, unfortunately, one of the main reasons that BLM 757 was formulated was because David Latham was killed by the Norfolk police less than 60 seconds with them responding to a mental health call here in Virginia. And so it was to the fact that, that's pretty much what was the norm. They knew that he had a history of mental health issues. This was the last resort. This is why they didn't want to call the police in the first place. And they literally killed him less than 60 seconds after being at his house. Another mental health case, Matthew Russian, a Black autistic male who is now incarcerated. He was set to do 10 years of a 50-year sentence for a non-fatal car accident. He was never taken to the hospital. He was never given any mental treatment. We were able to start a petition about this time last year. He will be coming home in March and not in 10 years, but it's just a testament to the fact that we do need to get comfortable with this defund language, because I know me as an activist and any other street activist, we're not shying away from that word. It's going to be there. It's unfortunate that the higher ups or the generation before us are not accepting that, but that is what we're at. We're at defunding. That is the language that we are using. We're not changing it. Get used to it. I'm sorry that you don't feel that it's the language that you want, but individuals had a long time to put whatever fight they wanted on the forefront of the table. It's defund the police, defund, disenfranchise. Some say abolish. I won't be saying abolish until I have an army behind me of the same numbers as law enforcement ready to literally come in and take over. Until then, I won't say abolish. Right now, I'll say defund, and I'll leave it at that.
To quickly respond to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
The language of defund, that is not something that I'm saying I don't want. That is something to where if you're building a movement, naturally you want as many people as you can on your side. And if that's as simple as a word and you get millions of other people and the word could mean pretty much the exact same thing, and be like the connotation be different, and you want people to join your movement, then you don't want to be divisive. That's like one of the staples of movement building. So that's not something that, and that's not my personal opinion. This is something that is like fact. You want to have as many people on your side if you're working to build a movement. And that doesn't get as many people on your side as I'm sure you want.
And let me
we're gonna tackle the defunding the police in a second. We actually, because I would like to explain to the audience exactly what it means to defund the police, because a lot of people don't understand what that is. So if you'd like to refer to that, Kirsten, please by all means do.
Yeah,
you gotta
I
explain what it is to people.
I think there are two issues here. One is the qualitative question, and one is the quantitative question. The terminology defund the police works contrary to the goal. And I will give you a prime example. And this is fact, so people can choose to accept it or not. The House of Representatives, the Democrats in the House of Representatives, those who introduced the Fairness in Policing Act and the First Step Act, those who are going to have to advocate and legislate a progressive police accountability agenda, lost seats in the House because of that language. So there is a quantitative impact to the messaging that you use. There is a reason why people spend billions of dollars a year crafting messaging, because you want to incentivize certain behaviors. You want to persuade people to your side. And so we can be as arrogant as we want. In that arrogance, we can't ignore the data. And the data points out it will be more difficult for the Democrats now to pass police reform, criminal justice reform, decarceration reform, because they have a smaller margin. That's just statistical, mathematical fact. Now we can espouse and I take exception to the whole thing about those that came before, because those that came before are still here. So I don't lend too much credence to people just because they got here last. The reality is this. The reality is, if you want to accomplish legislative reform, if you want to accomplish policy reform, you've got to have electoral wins. You've got to have a majority in your legislature. You've got to have the political capital to legislate and negotiate. And if your messaging undermines your science, it's just bad messaging.
Yeah, I think because when you say defund the police, the notion is that it is a call to remove funding that is going into the police department and taking that funding and reallocating those funds into organizations that are doing the work,
No,
right?
that's not what that means. No,
Gun violence prevention.
No, that's not what defund means. Defund means punish the
Yes,
police.
that is what defund means.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
How you gonna sit here and cut this queen off
Defund means
talking? That is
defund
what
means.
defund
Hold
means.
on. That is not what defund means. That's 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 not what defund means.
One at a time.
That's not what it means.
You were hearing.
That's not what it means, bro. That's not what it means. That's not what it means. That's not what it means. That's not what it means, bro. I mean,
okay.
You ain't the only one. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean?
You just cut her off while she was.
And the point is what? And the point is what? We're having a conversation.
Okay.
So yeah, it's literally a conversation. It's a conversation. We're all on the same team. So this is definitely uncalled for. It's a conversation. Like, you don't have to cut each other off. You can wait for each other to speak. We don't want to have to mute anyone. So let's please be respectful. Jafari, you could talk when Kirsten is done speaking.
Thank you for that, Trina.
Kirsten, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, Brandy, if I cut you off, you finish.
No, I said what I needed to say, which was defunding the police is reallocating those funds into organizations that are doing the work, that are doing gun violence prevention, getting involved. There's so many organizations, especially in New York City, that are doing that work. So if you take money out of the police force and you reallocate those funds, like, we don't need police showing up. Police showing up at our door has done nothing good for us. So we need to become more community oriented. But I invited you here on this platform, and I would love to hear your take on it. And, this is a conversation. So rebuttals are okay. And
right.
So sorry, you can come in after, but just, let Kirsten have his word. And then I welcome you to say what you have to say, Jafari.
So Kirsten was going to explain what defunding is. Apparently he's saying that defunding is not reallocating monies away from the police. So what do you think that it means?
No, if defunding means penalizing the police. Community investing, reallocation means reallocation. Defunding the police has a connotation, a punitive connotation, which is what most of the voters who decided on that issue read it as. So if I say to you that a word has a meaning to me, and I need you to accept that meaning, and you don't accept that meaning, then my meaning is irrelevant, because it's your action I'm trying to elicit. So here's the reality. The reality for somebody who had spent 30 years fighting for reallocation of funds, that was part of the movement that created the crisis management system, that invested in violence interrupters, that has challenged and gone to jail in all my years over 36 times, calling for budgetary reallocations. defunding the police has one connotation. That is, take from the police. It does not suggest where you invest. It does not suggest what you do with that money. Investing in the community, reallocating money, isn't about targeting the police. It's about investing money. Defund the police is about targeting one agency, just one, among many that are responsible for criminalization. So if we want to have a real, honest, and sophisticated conversation about decarceration, it can't just be defund the police. It has to be a reallocation out of all of the agencies, criminal justice agencies, human resource agencies, public housing agencies that use their money to criminalize. So that is the reality. Criminalization doesn't just happen at the hands of the police. It happens at the hands of social service agencies. It happens at the hands of public housing agencies. So if you want to talk about bringing equity and fairness and justice to a justice system, you can't talk about targeting one agency, because you can take all the money you want from the police. It has nothing to do with the district attorney's office. You could take all the money you want from the police. That has nothing to do with the family services agencies that criminalize our families as well. You could take all the money you want from the police. That has nothing to do with the corrections department or the Department of Prisons. So defunding the police means take money from the police. Investing in alternatives, reallocation of funds is not the same thing as take money from the police.
Thank you,
Jafari.
You wanted to rebuttal?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So defunding the police, again, the language is not changing. We'll be saying defund the police. That's what we're saying. I'm not really sure why the Black community is so hell-bent that the Democratic Party is supposed to be our savior, because the Democratic Party has been around for a lot of years and they still have not saved us. So I'm not really here to pet or pander towards any type of Democratic voters. I'm strictly independent, not Democratic, not Republican, not Libertarian, strictly independent. It's about who's for the people. These individuals have had years to get together. The Democratic Party has infiltrated the NAACP, so now the NAACP is pretty much paid to literally say what you just said. This whole, the whole rhetoric you just said, it sounds good. I've been hearing it for 5 years. It sounds great. I respect you for being arrested and putting yourself out here like that, as we are now. It's not a matter of you taking words because who came last. These are individuals who's on the ground now. We don't send thoughts and prayers. We haven't sent thoughts and prayers. And so the individuals sending thoughts and prayers are the individuals telling us what we should or shouldn't be doing, how we should or shouldn't be advocating, why we should or shouldn't be saying defund the police. And it's defund the police. And that language isn't going anywhere. We're not here to persuade. We're not here to bootlick. We're not here to do anything of the past. What we are here to do is have actual results from actual actions and going forward and taking it to the streets to fund the police. No justice, no peace. So until individuals are able to recognize that, we're just going to have to keep putting the message out there. We're just going to have to keep explaining ourselves as we're doing now, as we have in the past, as we continue to do. The defunding the police means exactly what it says. Take money out of the mouth of the snake and put it into those communities and those investments and those organizations who have nothing but volunteers running off of pretty much smoke and mirrors, and have to have individuals volunteer their time and have no funds allocated. We don't have boys and girls clubs. We don't have community centers. We don't have different things to put people in jobs at these places where we say there's so much violence, but we're not offering them any resources in order to combat what they have going on. If you take all the highly funded money from the police that sit around and wait for somebody to speed, sit around and wait for somebody to make a wrong left turn, sit around and wait for somebody to run a stoplight, go to their car, search them, pull them out of their car, put them in a situation, find them for whatever reason or another. We don't need that. We don't need any of that. We need mental health services. We need veterans' rights services. We need suicide prevention services. We need anti-bullying prevention services. We need money to actually go to people who are actually helping the community, and the police ain't it. The police show up after somebody is killed. The police show up after somebody is raped. The police show up after somebody is molested. So why are they the highest paid entity in any state, even outside of politicians? What are you really needed for if you aren't preventing anything? And to say all of this is because we're trying to protect some hierarchy with the Democratic Party is complete and utter bullshit. So having that stigma to just want to sit here and appease to the Democrats who fail us election after election after election. Even now, you're seeing with Biden, he's in office. He still hasn't sat down with any Black Lives Matter groups. Still haven't brought any Black Lives Matter groups into the White House to discuss what's going on. But you're going to sit here and still continue to try to tell us that, oh, the police are the way. The police who violently arrested me, picked me up by my genitals, had me locked away. The police who locked up this young queen and had her life shifted around. Or we're supposed to be one of, oh yeah, these are the people who need the most money. Oh yeah, these are the people who need the funds. Oh yeah, this is where our taxpayer dollars should be going, even though nothing has changed at all whatsoever.com. So respectfully, only because of your age, we have to say that we are not going with your language. We're not going with your rhetoric. We're not
What's
trying
my
to
age? What are you talking about? What's my age?
If you're not one age.
Thank you, Jafari.
What's my age? What are you talking about?
The movement is intersectional.
May I say something, please?
Please.
1 second. The movement is intersectional, so there are people of all ages partaking in this movement. And the defund the police conversation is really one that is controversial, and I think that that calls for another panel strictly about defunding the police. I do not want to monopolize. We have other questions to get through and things that are equally as important to discuss. So I would like to shift the conversation and move forward, and we can come back for a panel that's strictly about defunding the police. And I'll invite you to speak as well as others. And I encourage those that are watching to also do their research and, make sure you read so you can make your own assessment.
I think it's important though, because nobody bootlicking. And I bet you I've been to a march since you have. I just did a march yesterday in Rochester for a 9-year-old girl that had been pepper sprayed by the police. So you may see gray, but that doesn't mean I'm in a rocking chair doing nothing. And nobody is disagreeing with you, young brother. The problem is you're not hearing what we're saying. Nobody is espousing that the police are the answer for anything. No one is saying that the police are the end all and the be all. In fact, what we are saying is the way to go about accomplishing what you want to accomplish is not happening. And so nobody's here defending the Democratic Party.
Why is he able to go on and like I was cut off? I'm sorry, I was cut off and I wasn't done with my point, and now he's going on and on. Are we moving past this, or are we staying here? We're staying here. I'm not done talking.
Cut you off. I didn't cut you off. Now you're cutting me off. No. You have a problem listening. I hear. You're not going to call me a bootlicker and that I'm an apologist for the Democratic Party, and then I'm not supposed to respond to that. So that's just the fact. You're going to have to deal with that.
This was a discussion. If we throw jabs at each other, we'll just keep trying to retaliate back and forth, and we won't get any
retaliation.
We're going to pivot the conversation.
And I had to deal with that. That's all.
Kirsten, we're going to pivot the conversation. My next question actually was for you. You mentioned the 9-year-old. I know that you're currently working to help the family. The 9-year-old was handcuffed and pepper sprayed by police officers. One officer, I saw the video. I heard the officer tell the young girl that she was acting like a child. She was a child. She's 9. Why do you think those officers couldn't see her as a child? And these officers were suspended, not fired. So clearly the police department and the commissioner also did not see or care that this 9-year-old was a child.
So there are several issues here. One, the Rochester Police Department has arrested this young lady before, put her in handcuffs prior, so they knew who she was. Secondly, the Rochester Police Department has, in more ways than other departments, criminalized mental health. So the predicate that they used to arrest this young girl, to throw her to the ground, to handcuff her, to put her in the back of a police car, pepper spray her, and then slam the door in her face so she could breathe was a hygiene arrest. Under the auspices of mental health, they used a chemical agent on a 9-year-old Black child. It wasn't that they did not see her adolescence. What they did see was her race. She was a Black child, so she was not entitled to equal protection. She's not, in fact, a human being. So the dehumanization of our people begins at childhood. The criminalization of our people begins at childhood. So we have indeed gone to Rochester, spent the whole weekend there protesting, securing her and her family mental health services, bringing Black child psychologists and making them available to her, and securing housing for her for the next year. We were able to do that this weekend since her home was vandalized. They were thrown eggs at, spray painted. And so this is part of a pattern in the practice of using mental health as a justification for aggressive enforcement. In fact, that's what we saw with Daniel Prude. I was also up there for the Daniel Prude case and to support his family. This is a man that went to a hospital in Rochester to get help for his emotional crisis. When he gets there, they release him. He continues in his emotional state into the street, removes all his clothes, naked. Police get called into the situation, put what's known as a spit bag over his head, even though there were no indications that he was spitting. Then shoved his face, his head, fully naked, into the snowy ground as it began to precipitate. Then we all know what happened with the impending cover-up. So Rochester has a problem, a structural problem that goes beyond just the police. It's also the public health system. Because with Daniel Prude, it wasn't just the police, it was the EMTs that were on scene that refused to treat. So again, if we're gonna talk about reform, we've gotta talk about the entire system and how the entire system is used to criminalize and to kill. And Rochester is a prime example of where you have police, but you also have the public health system, which is complicit in the criminalization and murder of Black people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to my question that I have for Jill, I just want to say, like, the outsider looking in, you know, both you and Jafari are saying the same thing. You're just saying it in a different way. You're both doing the exact same type of work. You're doing it in Rochester and Jafari's in Virginia. And I would much rather see the two of you putting your ideas and thoughts together as opposed to being against each other. It would probably be a lot better. And I'm not really saying it for anybody's response. I'm just saying, as the outsider looking in and hearing both of you, you're saying wonderful things and you're both doing great things to help our people. And you're just saying and doing it in a different way. So I just wanted to say that. And I do feel, Kirsten, that you had the right to respond back to the bootlicker comment and the other comment. So that's just what I have to say. At the end of the day, both of you are human beings trying to do good work for our people. Jill, so my question is for you, because you're currently working on a case where a Black 21-year-old man was hung from a tree in Mississippi. And the police investigated this and quickly closed the case out as a suicide. Do you think the outcome of this case would have been the same if Willie Andrew Jr. was white?
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Yes, I do believe it would have. I believe it would have been different. I believe the outcome would have been markedly different. in this situation, you have, just the details of the case, like that Willie was a young Black man who was dating a white woman, and the white woman's stepfather is racist, had attempted to murder her ex-boyfriend who was also Black. The police had been to their home multiple times, to the stepfather's home, for calls of domestic abuse. And the cops, with this, knowing his propensity for violence, seeing all of this ridiculous, within 40 minutes of getting on the scene, they said this is a suicide. And they said that, I'm sure in part because this stepfather told them that it was a suicide on the 911 call. And they took his word for it, for whatever reason. We can say race, we can say they were lazy, whatever, but they took his word for it. And so I believe that if Willie had been white, there would have been a full investigation. If we can take this just like a little bit further, if Willie had been white and the girlfriend had been Black, and the rest of that family and the family had been Black, this would be a completely different thing. This would be all over the news right now. But no one wants to pay attention because people, they're like, oh, this is just another thing. We're almost like desensitized to tragedy. And at the same time, the media, they're not helping the situation, because there are cases that they could pay attention to, that they should pay attention to, that would actually go toward preventing these things from happening again. And that's one reason why they keep happening. So I'm sorry for being like emotional about this. It pisses me off what happened in this case and what this family is going through right now. So yeah, I most certainly believe that if he had been white, we wouldn't even be at this point of having a lawyer. This would have been solved 2 years ago.
Thank you. And is there anything, Jill, that we can do or anyone who's watching can do to support you in this case?
Thank you for asking that. We need to get the word out about what happened. To be clear, this will probably surprise nobody on this panel, but maybe some people who are at home. Lynchings never stopped. They never stopped. People just stopped passing around baseball cards and photographs of, and taking souvenirs because they can get caught. It still happens in the backwoods of places like Mississippi, which is where I'm from and where I am right now. And so one thing that would help is amplification. Share this story on your social media. Tag people who are influencers. If you yourself are an influencer, blast this stuff out. We need to get the word out. And what we need to do as well is to have mobilization on the ground. Because the thing is, even when we go to court, best believe we are still going to be in court in Mississippi. And we're still going to have a lot to overcome. And so it's going to take fighting on multiple fronts to get justice in this case. So amplification is the primary, if I could ask for one thing before funding, it's amplification so this story can get out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Is there a website or something? Is there some public record that we could point to that we can actually amplify?
Yes. So first, there are multiple posts on my IG about this. It's at Jill Collin J, just Jill Collin, COLLEN J. Also, my org, Julian, which named after my mentor, Julian Bond. If you go to our site, julianlegal.com/Willie, you will see all the details about this investigation. And to be clear, this is a case that I had to investigate on my own because the FBI dropped the ball, because the MBI dropped the ball. And so all that you'll see there is what we found independent of all of that other stuff. So please go there, please read up and educate yourself on it, and please get the word out. Thank you for asking that, Kirsten.
Thank you for sharing that, Jill. I commend you for picking up this case and doing your own independent investigation. That takes a lot out of a person. I'm sure it's it's emotionally draining, as well as exhausting to do that. So I definitely commend you, as well as everyone on this panel that is here doing the work. We are all fighting the same fight. We're in this together, and so I just want to remind you all of that. And before we close out the show, I would like to just say, what is the takeaway from today? If you can give 3 words to sum up tonight's discussion, for folks that are watching, please do. And I will start with you, Jill, and then go to Kirsten, Tori, and then Jafari.
You're muted, Jill.
Of course I was. I would say for me, the takeaway from tonight is that there are solutions to be had at the table and that we have to come together and make them happen. We've also seen that there are distinct differences in these debates, and there are ways, like you said, Trina, for all of it to come together because we are all on the same side. And so I would say my takeaway is that one
words.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What are your 3 words?
3 words that describe tonight. I would say raw. I would say necessary, and I would say progressive. Because not in the sense of like politics, but in the sense of progressing us as people, because we need to have these conversations to move forward.
Thank you. Kirsten?
Yeah, so I would say strategic, passionate, and honest. I think it's clear. Look, we shouldn't be afraid of tension. Dr. King said that tension is good. Creative tension is good. I have nothing but respect for anybody that puts their bodies on the line for justice. But that don't mean I'm from Brooklyn. We don't always use sweet honey when we talk, but that don't mean I don't have nothing but love and respect for my brother. I got love and respect for him and would go to war with him on any day. Go to war alongside him any day. And so I'm not afraid of hard conversations, because hard conversations is where real solutions come from. So I would say strategic, passionate, and honest.
Thank you. Tori?
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. I would say that my 3 words are awareness, action, and results. And I think that those 3 words pretty much says it all. It says what we need to get out there, and it says what we need in our community too.
Thank you, Tori. Jeffrey?
I think I wrote down thinking of speak out, resist, and expose. And I think those are the things that all of the panelists have done and committed their life to. And it also means putting your body out there. And also, I think a general approach has to be to decolonize America and support struggles against colonization in Palestine, toward Native Americans, and solidarity, particularly for white people, solidarity.
Thank you, much appreciated. And Jafari?
3 words: defund the police. And I would just like to say that I'm definitely appreciative of this conversation. I do feel like the takeaway is there are different scopes of the movement. I don't feel like one scope of the movement is more important than the other, so I don't want that to be misconstrued. Every piece is necessary, very necessary. But I for myself, I do speak for who is on the ground now and who we associate with in a general sense of what we're fighting for, and different activists right now that are on the ground are fighting for. I definitely, we've done works in New York as well. And like I said, and as Martin Luther King said, injustice to one is an injustice everywhere. I may have butchered that a bit, but an injustice to one is an injustice to all. So I do think that the title of this documentary, the reason why we are here in the first place, I do want to bring it home, is the portrayal of a nation. And I do feel like, is that 3 words? Portrayal of a nation. So I do feel like that is, that I feel like that was the purpose. And like I said, it has shown that even still, 400 plus, or since 16, 19 years plus later, we are still at a point where we are still having a conversation. I do encourage individuals to do different things. They do say doing the same thing, expecting different results, is the definition of insanity. So let's definitely put forward new ideas. Let's bring together ideas, and let's continue to move forward for the movement for Black liberation on Black History Month.
Thank you. And Jafari, can you drop your social media info, and then we'll go around the table and get everyone's socials for those who are watching.
Okay, my personal my personal Instagram, social media, etc., is at Jafari757. That's Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. JAPHARII757. Make sure y'all follow BLM757. That is BLM757 on all social media platforms. Please sign and share all petitions on BLM757.org. Again, one of those petitions, as of right now, is setting a young Black autistic male free. So don't think that there is no power in these. This same petitions got Juneteenth recognized as a statewide holiday here in Virginia. So please, 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 keep sharing. All actions are necessary. Please stay involved. However it is you can be involved. If you can't be in the street, if you can share, if you can absorb resources, no matter what you can do to help the movement, I strongly encourage everybody to start locally. Find your local movements, just like local politicians, and expand from there. Peace and power, peace and blessings. Black power to all.
Tori, how can people find you if they wanted to reach out to you regarding your case?
Well, I'm on Facebook at Elena Tori DeMar. You could just pretty much look up ELLENA Tori TORRI, and my last name DeMar, DAMARR. Instagram is just DeMar on Instagram, so it's really simple.
Thank you. And Kirsten, how can people find you? You're muted.
Yeah, to the pleasure of some, I'm sure. It is KirstenJohnFoy, or at Arc of Justice, ARC of Justice, on Instagram and Facebook, on the gram and Facebook, and Twitter is Kirsten John 4.
Thank you. And Jill, did you want to remind everyone of your socials? I know you mentioned it earlier.
Yes, so what I'll do instead is give you the social for my civil rights org, Julian_CRHR.
Thank you. And Jeffrey, how can people find you?
Well, I'm on Twitter at JeffHaas42. My website is jeffreyhaas.org. I'm on Facebook at Jeffrey H. Haas, and I'm on Instagram at JeffHaas42.
Thank you. All right. See, I told you we were going to have a great discussion tonight. I think.
Oh my goodness.
The ratings went up with that tension.
Yeah, it was so good. Ari and Kirsten, this was, you guys, everybody, you are so great. Wow.
Yes.
Well, this is how Thanksgiving dinner look in my house. So it's home.
As well as many of our families. All right, well, we want to thank each of our panelists participating tonight. Please follow their pages. And I also want to thank those of you who tuned in here on Facebook. The conversation will continue on Clubhouse tonight following this with questions and comments from the audience. If you haven't already, join our private group, Betrayal of a Nation documentary supporters for updates and info on the documentary. You can click on the link in the comments to join right now and let us know what you took away from tonight's discussion. We are putting forth efforts to expand our new Facebook group. Therefore, those of you that invite 5 to 10 people to join the group will be eligible to win a free screener to watch the Betrayal of a Nation documentary when it premieres Friday, February 26th. And last week's winner is Jennifer Tarkowski. Congratulations, Jennifer, and thank you for inviting others to the group. We will be reaching out to you. The Betrayal of a Nation documentary is currently available for pre-order on betrayalofanation.com. Follow us on IG and Facebook at Betrayal of a Nation and on Twitter at Betrayed Nation. And until next week, good night, Facebook. Bye.
Good night.
You ain't inviting us to Clubhouse, I see. You ain't sending it to the old cat.
You're invited. You're invited.
To the old cat. It's all good. Y'all have a good one. Yo, Jafari, much respect, much love, my brother. You keep doing what you do. Don't let nobody change you. Don't let nobody persuade you. Keep your same passion. Keep your same commitment. I ain't got nothing but love and respect for you. And that is what it is. Men talk like men. We talk, we men. We lie.
Same thing. We in the same space, though. I definitely appreciate you, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? We definitely, you know what I'm saying? This is, necessary. And I said sometimes things will get heated. I'm sorry. I said, what? We put activists in the room together.
You're gonna get that.
You're not gonna have no. Once it gets to that point, the activists don't come out of anybody. So it's like,
word.
This
Yes,
ain't
sir.
nothing like this is what we on the streets for. So it's like, well, our point needs to be heard. So
No doubt.
I definitely like say don't feel like I'm saying this is harsh or whatever type of situation. So I definitely look forward to building.
Yeah, you're invited to Clubhouse too, Kirsten.
What's that?
You're invited to Clubhouse. We're about to get that. Oh, you don't even know what it is?
I'm just playing with you. Come on now, I'm playing with you. You know. Yes. I don't think I can see y'all on Clubhouse. I gotta go.
What we doing?
Yeah, I'm gonna get it on.
All right.
All right. Good night.
Y'all
Good
have a good night.
All right.